Hi, everyone. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good.
Good. Nice to see you. So today I am here with the wonderful Katie Smith and our final, but definitely not least group 7. They're here today to talk to us for their social media shows about the nested precarities of creative labor. And I know that when I went into this room before the Thanksgiving break, they said we chat GBT'd this, but it was totally different than what we just discussed in class. And so I think that's a really good reminder to all of us that, go search for information, but sometimes it's also important to dig a little deeper. And I think that that is exactly what this team has done. I love how Jackson says first every time. Actually, it was Candace today for showing up on ours. Welcome to our wonderful class. We're excited to have you here. Feel free to join us in the chat. It's wonderful to see everyone joining there. So today I'm going to be passing the baton over to this wonderful team, and Katie and I are really excited to jump in as well. Before they get started, Katie, do you have any words of wisdom to share?
No, I'm just so excited for you guys. Group 7, I know you're going to knock it out of the park. I'm really proud of everyone and all of their shows, and this is just such a wonderful way and a wonderful group to wrap it up. So I'm really looking forward to it, and you guys are going to do amazing.
It's been a wonderful semester full of amazing shows. I think every team just keeps knocking it out of the park. So I'm very, very excited to have this final group with us today. And I'm going to pass it over to Lillian, who's going to be talking to us about the introduction here.
Yes, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hello, we are Group 7, and I am Liliana Rodriguez.
And I'm Tony. Sorry, there's a train in the back. Tony Cooper.
I'm Cassie McClure.
And I'm Damian Alvarez.
Today we will be going over nested precarities of creative labor. First off, you might be wondering, what are nested precarities? They are instabilities experienced by individuals or groups. Some examples we are going to get into. This is a lengthy list, so keep with me. I just want to make sure we get everything down. Inconsistent income, lack of benefits, competition, limited social safety nets, pressure of innovation to create, performance anxiety, fear of becoming obsolete, that's a big one, algorithmic bias, online harassment, personal relationships, and another huge one is cancel culture. Let's be real, working in the creative world is not fun and aesthetic and fun vibes and all that. We are going to be getting into the hardships of this job, and you really need a grind set kind of mentality to do this kind of work. And it's a very fragile system with many instabilities that, are really difficult to overcome. With that being said, let's get into it. We're going to start with going into social.
Sorry, I had a technical. Sorry. Hey guys, I'm Tony. I'm going to talk about the nested precarities in social media. So to start off, there was a quote that I saw in our nested precarities of social media article that said, "Small algorithmic changes by a platform can make or tank an entire career," which is a sad truth about being a content creator because it's so relevant today. As you know, there's plenty of influencers that were huge back in the day, like Vine or early stage of YouTube, that are washed up today, quote unquote washed up, because they're not really with the trends or relevant today, because you can't really stream on Facebook or something, but they were popular on Facebook or something like that. And to start off, we can talk about what recently happened. Kai Cenat, new famous streamer. Most of y'all probably know him. Put a thumbs up in the chat if you know Kai Cenat. Anyways, he just had his Mafia-thon, Streamathon, Subathon, where he broke the records for subscribers on Twitch. I think last time I saw it, the other day, it was over 700,000 some subscribers. So now he's making over $3.6 million a month, which is crazy. And with changes in algorithm, that could change overnight, which is crazy. Because, it's on a certain platform, which is why a lot of streamers have different platforms they stream on. One thing I was looking at was, what could happen if Twitch decided to jump in and say like, hey, you're making a lot of money, so we're going to, change the algorithm of how it works with the fees and stuff. Like, say every 1,000 subscribers, like this, how much you'll make instead, and that will definitely mess with their income because they might rely on it. In another article that we saw, TikTok did something similar. Yes, it said instead creators complained that every 1,000 views only translated to a few cents, and then that was changed because they kind of got together and about that. But yeah, the laws, it can change overnight with that. What else do we see? Oh, JoJo Siwa. Sorry, there was another incident with JoJo Siwa. I have it in my notes here. How she kind of washed up and people were starting not to like her. Um, she was getting millions of views on her post, but not many because people were starting to like the comments more than her posts. Like she'll get a few thousand likes, but millions of views, which is crazy. So the way it can change overnight is ridiculous. Like to keep up with people, like back to the Mafia-thon, FaZe Clan, they were also a popular group. They still are relevant today. But after Kai had announced about his Mafia-thon, him breaking the records, then not even 2 hours after that, they jumped on and they was like, "Hey, we're gonna stream for a month straight too." So that's another necessary precarity, trying to keep up with the trends and stay relevant to compete with the ones who are, beating and dominating the industry. So, like she said, the fear of, keeping with the trends and not getting washed out. What are you gonna do to compete and be different than the other streamer so it's not getting repetitive? Sorry.
I would love to chime in on the JoJo Siwa part a little bit. I do know that the reason all of that started is because there is a video going around that's kind of went viral of just a random netizen deciding to post a video about basically taking power, the people taking power in their likes. And so they decided, we're not going to be liking all these celebrities' content anymore. And JoJo Siwa happened to be the first one that they decided to try this out on. And it's probably hard for her, but imagine down the line who else is going to be affected by just netizens deciding to no longer interact with content that's being created on these platforms. And if it will go like even extend wider than TikTok and go towards Instagram likes and other platforms that these artists and influencers are using. I think that's an interesting way to look at it and see how far this kind of thing is going to go.
And another thing that I had noted down with necessary precarities, it could be other outside factors that jump into it, like COVID and anything going on in the world. Like with COVID happening and the writer strike and the actor strike happening, then streamers and influencers kind of became the mainstream of entertainment. So one thing I jotted down, what was interesting to me, is what would happen if, platforms decide to become like music labels and decide to have ownership of their creation. Because it's like, you're generating so much influence, revenue, and any quick change in their rules and laws, you sign the contract and say like, hey, now I have ownership of content produced on my app. And sorry, you were going to say.
Oh, I was just going to jump in because I think that's a really critical point, because if we think about all these platforms and the terms and services, basically they begin to own our content the moment we post it there. So it doesn't matter if it's this like special video or a post of me. The platform really does take ownership of that content, and once it's posted there, even if you remove it, the odds of it already being archived in the back end is very, very high. And there was a really concerning quote by Mark Zuckerberg, I think in Wired or one of those news articles, where he said, like, you content creators shouldn't care if your work is being trained by AI. Like, unless you're a big name publisher or something, like this doesn't apply to you, but it applies to all of them. So basically what he's saying in minimizing the ability of AI, like Meta's AI, to train its content creators' content on Instagram or so forth, is that we are going to train our AI with your content. And we already are using artificial influencers and people on this platform. So, I mean, I think that opens a huge concern in this sort of nested precarities, because we already have unstable job markets. And now we know that AI is being used to train and track and code content creators' work. So I think that's a really relevant and interesting point you just brought up.
Thank you. Yeah. And back to the, unstable income and everything, we are also looking up and reading like, what's going to happen to these creators whenever they grow older, because they don't have a traditional job. So they're not getting benefits or like a 401k. So a lot of them, as you can see, become musicians or actors and stuff like that. So, which then they're eventually owned by a company after that, or they rely on brand deals and stuff like AMP has their sponsorship with Bang Energy, which Kai Cenat's involved with that too. And it's really a cutthroat industry. So your life could change like that, or you could tank like that.
I think that's true. And I think it also lends itself to a discussion about entrepreneurialism, because if you think about any entrepreneurial spirit, I come from a family line of entrepreneurs, and yeah, they weren't in the creator industry, they were in the restaurant sector and hospitality sector, much like Katie's family. But that same like precarity is there. Like, if there's instability in the market, people are not going to come in. If all of a sudden there's some sort of food scare, people are not going to come in. So, I mean, there's all these precarities built into entrepreneurship. So I guess in that vein, I'll ask Tony and maybe some of the other people on this panel, how is content creation similar or different from entrepreneurialism? Or do they all need to basically act like entrepreneurs in this role?
Yeah, I'd say if you really want to sustain a kind of like stable income, a lot of them do kind of become their own business owners because they're selling themselves. They are the product. But then like you'll get companies to make you the face of their company, or you'll be the selling point of their product. Like you see that with a lot of TikTokers. I was looking at King Batch's TikTok account. He was very popular, famous Viner, and made skits, and now he makes like he's acting in Netflix movies now. But I was looking through his TikTok, and if it wasn't a skit, then it was an ad for something. And I'm like, so this is how you really make your money, through ads and stuff, because he's a stand-up comedian too. But yeah, you definitely would have to become some type of businessman or entrepreneurship.
To touch base on that as well, I do think that business owners, and to some extent also eventually become advertisers. They have to go on these platforms to get the word out about whatever is going on or whatever that they're doing, to get word out to the audience that they're trying to reach. So regardless if they are intending to become influencers, they have to have some level of influence on platforms. So kind of becomes one at the end of the day.
I think that's a really insightful comment, Lily. And we start to see a lot of businesses and business owners really operating like influencers, even if they are not at this point. And so it just becomes this sort of tactical game, so to speak, in these settings. I'm curious. I know Cassie kind of leaned in and turned off your mic for a second. Did you want to jump into that conversation?
My only other thought would be the control of the algorithm. Just because, say, if you are within a physical business, you don't technically have a larger business that is going to suddenly decide, let's change the algorithm on this business. But it could also go into, rather than it being on a scale of a large business deciding to change their algorithm, instead maybe just the people themselves, the change of the season, determining the business's, I guess, algorithm in itself. But I think that goes into some other things we were talking about previously as well.
And I think according to our Nested Precarities social media article, It mentioned a lot of loss of control because like ownership of platforms like Twitter X could change like overnight, like Elon Musk getting ownership of Twitter, well now called X. And before he had ownership, Donald Trump was banned on it for somebody found it. What was it? They said loud mouthing.
Yes, I researched it a bit. Apparently, according to the Twitter CEO of the time, they banned him because to summarize, it was during the January 6th riots. And during that, his tweets, they didn't want him to impose violence or incite violence with misinformation and his apparent loud mouthing he often did across the platform at the time. And it wasn't until Elon Musk bought Twitter that he was brought back onto X.
Yeah, and so like that can happen with any platform. You could be a famous streamer or influencer, but if something happened, like you had a ban or what happens a lot on Twitch, something outside of what, say like the influencer's talking to you right now, but something happens behind them, but it's deemed, against their community guidelines, that person's banned. And it's not even fair to them. But say ownership switch, but they're like, I really like this content, this influencer, I'm gonna bring him back on. So it's like an influx of powers. It's like who really controls it,
I want to just like hit a nail on the hammer right here on the power and platforms question, because I think that when we started talking about social media more broadly as a society, there was this perhaps misguided idea that they were a neutral and objective space for free speech or just, free communal and community engagement and assemblage. But I think what we're really seeing right now is the political plays on platforms. And I'm curious what you think about that, because that just adds a whole different dynamic to the power of a platform if it can be used as a conduit for politics, or if it, you know what I'm saying? So, or if we can change the terms and conditions just based on who is running a particular company or not. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about this idea of platforms as a political conduit, without being too specific about platforms, just like general thoughts.
I'll take up this question a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that platforms in general have already been used on social media outlets as, or the social media outlets have been used already, because those news networks that were once on TV are now already being used on social medias. And so the information that's getting streamed on your regular TV station is already being streamed on one of those platforms. So I feel like they've already combined as of now, and definitely have been used usefully. I know you said not to get into specifics, but X has been used very specifically for certain candidates getting their, I think, viewership up. More people were able to see them, and people were able to influence others' votes on those platforms as well, politically. Yes.
Thank you. Cassie, Tony, I think both of you were leaning forward.
Yeah. Well, my other part was when it comes to social media platforms and their political, like not even their own political selves, but say you take a social media platform and their goal is to keep your viewer engaged consistently. So a way to keep them engaged is by sharing content they resonate with, whether it's true or false. So within whatever political way you see yourself, it's going to continually feed you that information, whether it's right or wrong, because that is what's going to continue your venture into the platform, which often spreads like what we were talking about, misinformation, disinformation, things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think you're talking about like this idea of an echo chamber, or like the filter bubbles that we sometimes see in our feeds. I think that information will always penetrate that, but I do think that it will reinforce to some extent. Sure. Tony or Damien?
Yeah, I actually wrote down a note on that very same topic too. Actually, it was a question for everyone, but I was gonna say, like, will politicians start using streamers or streaming platforms to drive their political campaigns, since streamers and influencers have such a big influence on the world? Like, for example, Kamala Harris, she had famous like musicians in her campaign and stuff like that. Just make an appearance. Like, what if they have that for their shows? Or even there's some podcasters and stuff, like they'll have Donald Trump come on or somebody like that. And, oh, I see your question. But yeah, like you can boost their campaign.
It's not my question, it's your question.
Oh, yeah, basically. Yeah, because I know, I guess you can see it as a way, because a lot of presidents are like more on the elderly side, old side. So they try to appeal to the young crowd and see where they're at. Like Donald Trump getting on podcasts or doing YouTube videos with the Nelk Boys, and Kamala Harris having famous artists that a lot of young people follow make an appearance and stuff like that. So let's see, is anyone answering? No one's answered. But yes, because there's a little delay.
We have a very long delay.
Yeah.
And
Very good.
into this idea of politics and power, and maybe we can circle back around to this idea of like, how does politics and power relate to precarity in terms of, especially this idea of banning or people moving to the content edges of what's acceptable practices.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, I like that they do this too, but a lot of platforms kind of, if they see something political, they'll have like I know Instagram does it. They'll have like a little label on it, like, basically you'll do your own research. This may or may not be true. This is a political ad or something like that.
I'll try and loop it back on to the precarity aspects of it. So I do know that we did talk about, the thing is this is a conversation about someone who was someone on the internet, a huge influencer, but I can't remember her name, and that's just to go along with the topic of the fact that she fell off. And it was because that she got banned or kicked off of the platform for some reason, and they tried to rejoin and establish her following again. But it's so hard when the algorithm no longer accepts you because you've already been booted out. And to gain that following back is just another precarity. Once the algorithm does you wrong, it's not easy to forgive and easy to, create content and have the same viewership that you once had.
And what was the term they called it? What, irrevivable influencers?
Oh, I did write that one down. An unrevivable influencer. They have a name.
Unrevivable influencer. I like that.
Yeah.
So to answer this question of will politicians use streamers to drive political campaigns, Jackson says politicians won't shut up about this one, and didn't Trump already do that? And then Alyssa says Joe Rogan with Donald Trump, and Owen says, I've seen some politically affiliated influencers like Bryce Hall most recently. I think they were paid, and some just state their own opinions. Connecting to your constituents directly through social media is extremely efficient and cost effective. Lexi says, AOC streamed Among Us on Twitch to discuss voter registration, attracting over 400,000 live voters. Candace says, I believe they already do, but I definitely see that the future of having a significant collaboration between streamers and politicians. I would agree with all of this. I think we are seeing a rise in, I don't even want to call them influencers, but just like a rise in persuasion and influence by streamers. And I think we're seeing this in all sectors, whether it's the dissemination of news to young people who are already in those spaces, who don't want to receive the news necessarily as objectively as people of our past did. Maybe like my dad always watched the news in the morning and evening. And they want that commentary, and they want to feel a connection to a community of people who are already supporting that. And I think people are in that space. We have one more here. As social media grows, they definitely believe politicians will use it to promote themselves more. I'm going to turn that back over to the team. Maybe you have some reflections on what your classmates just said.
Yes, I also agree that they'll become like kind of like an ad for them, because I mean they're already doing it for big companies and their products. So as a politician, you'd see, like, as an advertiser for a politician driving their campaign, I would see that as like, yeah, this is a great way to reach out to this key demographic of voters, like the young crowd who may or may not be voting because they don't really stay as educated as other people who care more about who's running our country, which we all should. But yes, I agree. I think they're definitely moving into the future. There'll be some faces of campaigns. Where'd they go?
Oh, I don't know. That's okay. I'll take over a bit from here. I just wanted to say that. Wait, what's going on?
I'm giving you more space on the screen. That's
Yeah.
all. You can call me up if you need me.
I was just gonna say that I think streamers are becoming so huge now. Not that it's easy to become huge; it's not easy at all. But they're becoming so big now that they're even hanging out with celebrities. Like I know we just talked about the Kai Cenat. He was streaming for 1 month straight, and he had tons of celebrities that are on red carpets and doing all these big events, and they can become so huge. But it's also they can become so huge and they can fall from the heights that they've rose to. And from that, Damien, do you want to get into our articles?
Yes. So my article portion was over the metrics, measures, and the markets of these layers of instability. So according to the article, in 2013 is when we saw the rise of content creators using social media, not as just for production of their content, but also to boost their reputation. While while a few content creators only use one platform, like maybe only one does Twitch, maybe another only does YouTube, those who want to boost their reputation, get into sponsorships, deals, getting sponsored by companies, they will try and broad themselves out to multiple different various social media. So they'll have an account for Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and they'll change their behavior based on each single one. So while Twitch is their live, down to earth version of themselves, you might see a different version of them compared to their Twitter or their Instagram variations of them. And when it comes to these content creators building their reputations, they also try to measure what their audience will like. And unfortunately, the audience isn't so easy to gauge in this market. And one quote I pulled is from James. He didn't have a last name, so I'm not sure what type of James this is, but they mentioned, I think it's just about what people are watching, what they want to see, and what they identify with. And this brings me back to another portion of the article. The media industry is often trying to measure the audience's gauge over these audience metrics. So they'll try and see what is popular, what's going to be popular, and they'll put a lot of money and invest a lot of investment funds into these projects. So I kind of want to lean into this question for the audience, but I'll keep going after, is an example of a product, a person, a movie, and an artist, maybe an album that companies put a lot of money into, but just ultimately failed because the business failed to measure the audience's cultural relevance with the subject. So for an example, for me, I remember it was not old, a few years ago, that Morbius movie that came out. It did poorly, but it made a bunch of people made a bunch of jokes and memes about it on the internet and on social media. So they brought it back to theaters where it failed for a second time in a row. And then there were more jokes saying how they should bring it back for a third time because they had plans or something that weekend. But it just shows that some companies just aren't in touch with the audience despite trying to have a presence on social media in the first place.
Yes. Just real quick, can you simplify the question again for me?
Oh, okay. An example of a product that was heavily invested into that failed. Like, I know there are often theories on the internet over industry plants for certain artists that just pop out of nowhere. Like, they just start making music, they're getting popular, but no one knew of them before.
I feel like you don't have to look that far down into history to see this everywhere. You think of the Kodak film, right? Like when I was a kid, I would save up my allowance to go buy Kodak film, and that the irrelevance of that now seems so huge. I remember going to Blockbuster and buying DVDs, renting those DVDs, which now seems so quaint and nostalgic. Katie, can you think of any examples that I think, Owen says the Cybertruck. A lot of people love to hate on the Cybertruck, but I actually really like the design of it. I'm like almost embarrassed to admit that I like that it looks crazy. But I will say, it's had a million recalls, so I don't think I would own one, but I think they're really cool looking. But yeah, Owen, Sarah says the movie, it ends with us. That's funny.
That is a good one.
I love it. Daniel says Jaguar. Okay. Any other examples?
I kind of want to just say who's speaking?
I'm so sorry. You can go ahead, Liliana.
I just wanted to say the line I know from Mean Girls, and it's, sorry for the noise. I do not know what that was. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's like, it's never going to happen. Like, don't push some kind of thing onto an audience, that they're not going to like.
Yeah, that's so funny. And I think that the first thing that really popped into my mind kind of goes off Lexi's comment that she just made, the Amazon Fire Phone. It was those Google glasses that they tried to, I think that was probably about 10 years ago now, but it was called Google Glass. And it was this really weird pair of glasses to bring kind of AR to people, but it did not really work. It didn't really catch on, and so I think that's the first thing that came to mind when you asked that, Damien. But that's an interesting question.
And what's funny is that the Google Glass has become an early prototype for all of these AR glasses that they're now experimenting with, including what are the Ray-Ban ones that
Meta.
Yeah, so I always see those ones. And then Aranda says Cheetos lip balm. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing to begin with, but I can see why it didn't last. And then Owen says the Snapchat glasses have flopped. A lot of the wearables have not done as well as projections have wanted them to do. And I think part of that is like the tech is not living up to what the promissory note is in the advertisements. So, and then the price point being very high. But if you ever want to play with a pair of those Google glasses, I'm sure John would take them out at Innovation Club if you're ever there on Friday afternoons, because they do have a pair. We took them out for our grad class so everyone could try them on. So that was fun.
I know. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know it wasn't a product, but a platform that kind of flopped because of, I don't know how the ownership kind of switched, but from HBO Max to Max. Like,
and MySpace, like it's still there, but like who's on MySpace? I don't know. Every so often I go just to go check it out, or Friendster, Napster, LimeWire. Like I think a lot of these things, they come and they go.
Oh, did you want to speak, Tony?
Oh, no, you're good. I was going to say you can continue.
Okay, so all right. To go into the next section, one reason why these products may fail in the first place is due to the ever-changing cultural shifts. So, for example, during 2019 to 2020, there was the whole COVID pandemic. Because people were locked indoors, that led to a rise in Twitch viewership, YouTube viewership, live streams, DoorDash, at-home delivery services. Like before COVID, I would always go to the grocery store to pick up, food and products. But now I just order on HEB and then just drive over there and then just deliver it to my car now because it's just much simpler. So going back to the whole celebrity versus Twitch streamers, how Twitch streamers are becoming more famous, that even politicians are joining up with them, doing collaborations to help boost their viewership. I think celebrities failing currently, or at least not doing as well, is due to the rise of social media. So back before the rise of social media, people would only ever see these musicians and movie stars on TV, or if they're lucky at a concert, and they would only have their idea of what they did in their head. But as soon as they started going on Facebook and Twitter, posting their lives about, people would see they're not what they thought they were. So like during COVID, you saw all these celebrities posting these videos about how hard it is for them as well at life during this whole pandemic, and most people just did not resonate with them. They could not feel any similarity with them. Like, for example, you would see there was that whole scandal with the "If You Would Just Imagine" song that was started with all the celebrities singing that song, and then it was eventually parodied on that one show, The Boys, because of how not relatable it was. People were dying, unable to see their families, and then you have all these celebrities in their mansions just saying we're just the same as you guys, but no one really bought it. So their credibility has now just hit the drain. People don't want to see them; they want to hear their opinions. But now, when it comes to Twitch streamers, because they're always live, you always see what they're doing, even if it's not similar to your life. At least you can see how the beginnings of their start to how it is currently. So that's why I believe why Twitch streamers are now taking the rise and the role of what celebrities used to do for politicians and gaining votes and becoming better influencers than celebrities did in the past.
There's this concept called calibrated amateurism that I think a lot of streamers employ, which means they try very hard to look a little bit more amateurish than they are to cultivate an element of authenticity with their viewers. And so there's almost like this professionalized amateurism that's coming through, and I'm curious what you all think about that. But I do, when I watch Twitch streamers, get that sense of like they want me to feel like they're just the person next door.
Yes. Sorry, did you want to speak?
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, that's kind of funny how that works, because I want to say Lily's gonna talk about it, but the pressures of like being an influencer, how you have to have this image all the time because people only see you as that, and you have to, whenever like something serious like the pandemic happens, it's like, hey guys, I'm still here, be happy, it's me, and I'm just like you, or I'm not, they're not really going through anything, or they're going through something but they got to pretend that they're happy to influence the world to stay happy. That was just my thought on it. I was like, wow.
To go back to the Twitch streamers acting like amateurs or acting more real than they are, back during one of the weekly assignments we did over certain influencers. I believe I did one over this Twitch streamer who went by the name Super TF. And I did research a few of his videos, and he looks like just a normal guy. He plays video games in his room. There's just only one camera, and he just, everything looks normal. But at some points, he would complain about something very mundane, and then his Twitch chat would come in and say, "A millionaire complaining about such and such." So it really brings, like, even though he looks similar, he acts similar to the rest of us, at the end of the day, he is a millionaire. He has a lot of money. He can make problems that make him unhappy disappear within a snap.
Yeah, so even though they're trying to look like us, the dollar signs behind their bank account are vastly different. And I think that comes into this self-presentation of what you might describe as like vulnerability. And Lillian alluded to this in the introduction, which is like there's a lot of labor that goes into all of this creation that we don't see. And sometimes that is like being vulnerable is a form of labor, right? Like, allowing people to see you more intimately. But even like, putting 5 hours into a video and people watch it in 20 seconds is also a form of vulnerability. So I think all of that kind of plays into this discussion.
And I want to bring this back to another question for the audience and for maybe others to discuss is, when you see these celebrities and these Twitch streamers, do you think they've almost become a character of themselves? Almost not like a real person? Like, if I had to suggest someone, I would suggest maybe Jim Carrey. Now I know he's been like in a bunch of other movies, but whenever I see him, I just think of that wacky, high energy detective Ace Ventura from the movies. Like even though he's played the Grinch, he's been in that lawyer movie. He's almost a character of himself. High energy. He always is just moving around, almost like he plays the same character in every movie, just with a slight variation of it.
I have an example, but my example is more of I feel like she tries to be overly relatable and overly vulnerable, which would be I love her and I love her brand, but it's Emma Chamberlain. And I mean, she grew up with most of, I feel like, Gen Z. And at first, she was very authentic because she was herself, but I feel like she still tries to maybe cling to that persona a bit so she can still seem as though she's very relatable, but at the end of the day, she's now someone who models, is on magazines. She's now someone who has her own brand and has made something of herself. So she's not as relatable as she once was.
I would say Robert Downey Jr. because everybody sees him as Iron Man and not Robert Downey Jr., the actor, and so he just kind of goes by that. And it was a lot of like mixed responses from Marvel fans whenever they announced that he'd be the new villain, like Doctor Doom. People are like, "That's Iron Man. There's no way." So I feel like that's also could be another precurity, like how the audience shifts and changes about how they think about an influencer or actor. So I'm like, that's not right. He's my Iron Man.
But if one day there's another Iron Man, then he's obsolete. He's no longer Iron Man. The
Like
next generations are going to perceive someone else to be that person. Kind of just like The Wicked just came out. These younger generations are now going to see that Glinda, isn't it Glinda? The one Ariana was, that's Ariana Grande. That's the good one. That's her. But maybe previous generations might have viewed it as a different actress or actor for those kind of roles.
And then all those characters from the GTA 5 video game. The game's been out for like almost a decade, and people still refer to those three actors by their game characters, not their name. I don't even know their names, to be honest with you. I just know their game character names. But they talk about that a lot, like on their social media. Like, I just kind of live by, like the guy who plays Trevor in the video game. He's like, yeah, people expect me to act psycho when they see me. But it's like, that's not who I am.
So I think this is such a curious and interesting conversation that you're all having. And I think just to bring it back to this sort of idea of like, are creators characters of themselves? Well, I think, and I'm curious to know what all of you think, is that there has to be such a careful self-presentation or self-branding of these people that they have created the characters that they really want to be perceived as. And that doesn't mean there isn't a kernel of authenticity or a kernel of truth to who that is, but we are really seeing a very curated presentation of a human being when we are on social media. And I think that they do this very intentionally and across platforms as a way to kind of stave off the the threat of cancel culture or the threat of algorithmic environments that might deprioritize their visibility. And I think it becomes, part of this concern that like if I don't have a particular persona and if I don't play to it well, that maybe I won't actually be here. And so I think that's really interesting. But I've noticed a trend in the last say 6 to 9 months where we're seeing like creators be ultra vulnerable and showing more sentimentality and more emotionality. And part of me thinks sometimes that this gets into an uncomfortable place where I'm like, I don't know if I want to see this anymore. And so I'm curious if that performativity, like, is there a line to it where like you're just there, but like you've gone too far?
I do think there's people that come up with like obvious characters in their creator senses, like Fred from back in the early 2000s or Liza Koshy. I don't think any of us think Liza Koshy actually goes back and forth between, Target and Dollar General looking for things that are a dollar. Nor do we think Fred is actually walking around with a squeaky voice. but they definitely have very curated characters around their social medias that they consistently kept up with for years. And while you may, for instance, like Fred, who eventually just dropped the character and introduced himself as a normal person, isn't nearly as popular as he used to be. And then as for Liza Koshy, she still has a relatively high social media presence, but doesn't have near the popularity she held within Vine, which fit her comedy the best.
I think as long as that they're creating content towards the demographic they initially started with and keeping up with what they want to see, that the content that they're making is still relevant. It will stay relevant because it's catered to them. So as long as there's still a one fan out there they can cater to, they'll still be doing it the same way.
My favorite is the parody accounts where people can't tell their parody accounts, so they circulate them, basically trying to like scour these people for having the opinions or viewpoints they do. And I can think of a few examples, but you know what I'm talking about. The people who are definitely doing parody and are getting skewered because people don't realize it's parody. Those are the funny accounts.
I saw a comment that just said, oh, I wish we could bring it back. It was that we act, perfect. That we tend to act differently where anyone can see us, work, school, and social events. I kind of want to touch base on that comment because if you have an online persona and your outside persona differs from it too much, you can get canceled because you're not who you're portraying to be online. That's a huge thing. And if they see you acting a certain way that isn't, that your target audience doesn't want to see, they don't want to see what you're doing if you're doing something bad, then you can lose lots of followers and even your platform if it gets out of hand.
Oh, Lily, you can even talk about that. You said it was an influencer that used a religious song.
Oh, yes. This was not the most recent, but there was she's now an artist. She is on multiple platforms. Her name is Nessa Barrett, and she got canceled online for using a sound that was of religious context and not knowing what it meant to the people who are a part of that religion. And she ended up getting lots of hate for months. Multiple apologies came out, but once that content is out, and it's very hard to change the narrative at that point. But she did eventually change how people viewed her. So not all bad anymore. But yes, I do think harassment is huge online, and just people seeing other sides of you brings out the harassment. Even a simple mistake like that one.
And that only came up because I saw Lexi's comment about Terry Joe, a TikToker. She said, is a popular online persona, fictional Southern Christian woman with a strong fake accent and religious views. The exaggerated portrayal of a Southern Christian pokes fun at certain stereotypes, which could be seen as offensive to some who hold those beliefs sincerely. That's what brought up that idea. So definitely having this persona of I love you all, but I'm gonna use this song or I'm gonna use this for my joke. So more our article. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I believe Cassie was next. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
So I read the article that talked about branding and branding yourself within social media. And my quote is, the absence of contextual boundaries means that one's family, friends, coworkers, and potential employers are often privy to the same digital persona. So I think that goes in well to what we were just talking about, that goes into the character you play, your own digital persona. And I think when it goes into branding yourself, and especially for vloggers, family bloggers that are known at this point as an ethical issue in itself, and then you can see in multiple issues like the drama with Combat Gel and her husband not wanting to be on camera, that whole issue coming up where it seemed like a character in himself to just be mad, and she created that for him, but then it ended up going south. And for those of us that are on TikTok too often, like myself, knowing the whole drama behind it, it's gotten to the point where they're still together, but he is no longer takes part in her social media platform. And there's also other evidence of it within family vlogs, within the children themselves. A case from November 13th where one family vlogger, her child is actually took her to court, and her mother was charged with child abuse for the family vlogging and would rather have no money. One of the quotes saying she'd rather have no money in her pockets than to have her whole childhood on display for the world. So I think how that goes more into the Nessa precarities is knowing that as a vlogger and as a content creator trying to create a persona and brand online, bringing other people into this piece, even if you think you have their okay on it, it still places them into a public piece where originally they might have thought they were just getting a quick film, ends up going a bit too far. And I guess my question for y'all would basically be, do y'all think it's ethical to kind of allow others in your life to be part of this persona? Or do y'all, because I think whenever people are kind of allowing themselves to be in these videos with these content creators, they don't always know how far it's going to go, especially within themselves and people recognizing them off the street and kind of assigning what they think you should be as a person based on a short clip of you in a popular vlogger's channel. So basically my question would be, what would the ethics of creating a brand and character of those in your life would be as an influencer? Does that make sense?
I think one that's so stressful because I think they should kind of set boundaries for themselves and for their audience. Like, because I notice like whenever I watch a lot of like gamers, whenever they make their videos, and it's like, okay, guys, I'm going to end because I have to go, pick up my son or my daughter from school, or I have to go eat some food, like let me be a human again. There's another thought I had. Oh my gosh, I lost train of thought. Oh, yes, involving your family in that. I think that's also stressful because I know I was talking about before we started, we were talking about Bobby Eloff, right? Eloff. How she really so she started up her podcast, and before she even started, she was $20,000 in debt. She's a mother, and she's also trying to be this influencer. That's a lot of pressure because when you got to be a mother first, but trying to involve all that around is too much, and then she ended up getting a divorce. So it's a lot of pressure from the world and yourself.
Cassie, I'm trying to write the question so I can pin it. Can you just say it again for me so I can type it up?
Yeah, it would be, what do you think the ethics of including your family/friends in your social media identity involve, whether it would be right or wrong?
Oh, this is a good question. I don't know if you've seen the stats that came out of the like young girl influencers, like the gymnasts and dancers, young girls. And what they ended up finding was that the mothers were managing these accounts, and the people who were primarily following these accounts were actually middle-aged white men. So, you do I'm not going to say anything more about that, but you do the math on why they're following and, where that line is. And I've often thought about that. Like, would I post my daughter or son, even son, publicly? And the answer to that is like a hard no. And so like on my, very private closed down accounts, yeah, I'll post pictures of them, but I know who's on those accounts and I'm not concerned about the people on those accounts. And so you think about this like as an influencer or creator, and then you think about these accounts that are posting about their families. I think that's really interesting, an interesting discussion. And so going back to some of these comments, if it's children under a certain age, I think they should be off limits. If you're a teenager and receiving some type of benefits, then yeah, I would agree with that. And one thing I've seen that a couple influencers do that I really appreciate, these like mom influencers, is that they never put their child's face. So they only will put pictures of them, the back of their head, or they'll always put something over the child's face, which I think is really important. And can you imagine being like the boyfriend or girlfriend of someone? I'm just like seeing Lexi's comment here. The boyfriend or girlfriend of someone who's an influencer and being like forced to be an influencer culture. I think that would be very difficult. And then Eric says, I think it's fine as long as your friend and family is fine with it. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Do any of you follow the Tall family on Instagram? I don't know why I follow this family. They came up in my feed. And it's hilarious. They're a very tall family. There's nothing special about them other than they're tall. But they get all these people and public figures, and they get these cardboard cutouts to show just how tall they are in comparison to other tall people. I don't know, it's just kind of fun and humorous, but like clearly the whole family's in on it. Candace says, I don't like family vlogging. Putting the pressure on your family, especially children, to perform several parts of their life instead of just enjoying it is not ethical. And I think that that's certainly a conversation. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to what Candace just said.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that too, because like a lot of the kids, they're growing up in this life of being an influencer, and then they'll kind of make the decision themselves, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, not knowing the future of it. So I remember, I think it was Lily, she told me someone had dropped out of high school because they're already a influencer, and that could change overnight. You could lose all your money, but you dropped out of high school, so you can't really do much after that. And I know I've been seeing a lot of these guys, this family, they've been popping up on a lot of influencer stuff, but the Costco guys, I don't know if y'all keep up with them, but yeah, you have the dad and everything, but you still have these two little boys, and now they're going to grow up and everybody's going to know them as the Costco guys or something like that. So it's like, let them kind of decide their own goals and let them achieve their own goals before they have to like kind of dedicate their life to being this figure all the time. They're just a kid.
One of the very first viral YouTube videos was the Charlie bit my finger. I don't know if you've seen this one, but like the two boys are like, I don't know, somewhere in the house, and the kid bites the finger. Charlie bit my finger. And I always think like, how horrific to be the 30-year-old who's like, I was Charlie. I bit my brother's finger. Horrific. I think all those involved should be able to choose whether they want to participate, including children. Yeah, so just like giving agency. I do think there's an age at which, though, and I'd be curious if Daniel could comment. Like, I think there's an age at which some of these children, they can't even verbalize consent. Like I'm thinking of some of the influencers that I know where their children aren't even verbal yet. So I think, yeah, I agree with, child agency and allowing them to participate, but I think sometimes it's happening before that's even possible. Lexi says individuals like minors who may not fully understand the long-term implications or the internet's permanence. I don't remember what this was about, but maybe the thing that I said earlier. So yeah, exploitation, I think, is a real concern. Yeah.
I just want to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lily.
I just wanted to add in that, like, they did mention. I know multiple people said about divorces and relationships falling apart due to these instances. But I wonder if also it's a double-edged sword. If you choose not to put your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend on there, if there becomes problems in the relationship due to the fact that you have a following and you're someone well-known, and, people may want to break up those people, and they're wanting to be known worldwide as your partner and that you are taken, and the fact that if you don't want to do that as well, it's also a problem.
I do think it depends on the self-brand of the creator or influencer, because I think in some cases I don't care. And in other cases I'm like, I actually do really want to know that. I don't know why I care about this, but it's just because of the way they open into certain gates and others, right? Depending on their content.
It's like dating a model. Like like your wife or your husband is this public figure that people see interest in or find attractive. But sometimes people may not like that, and some people want to like show like, that's my husband or that's my wife. And that could also go into like their media, stuff like that. But that's just not like, if you're a model, like that's not your brand or that's not your persona. So it's like, why do I have to involve you in this?
There's one guy. Oh, I was gonna come with an example. There's one dude on the social media that's basically, he does like thirst traps and things like that, where he's like, yeah, I'm really strong and I could lift you up. But then people online found out he had like a really like short, small girlfriend. So then he started getting crap for that. And they were like, dude. And also at the same time, you're like, he's making content. You don't need to know whose his relationship is. But that would be one instance of people being like, we need to know what's happening in your love life.
We need to know the context of who you're picking up.
Yeah.
Good example.
On the same article that Cassie was talking about, I pulled this other quote that is, the expectation is that you have to be everywhere. And this kind of goes with the notion of not putting your eggs all in one basket. I think that's a huge part of so being on social media. You have to know to dip your toes in every single one that's out there, because if one falls and you're only on that one, your entire career is over in an instant. So there's with platform specific self-branding, these businesses are having to, modify ads and content on every single platform based on like the sizing differences, and if they allow videos or if they only allow images. And these are things that they have to take into account. And it's a lot of work editing on all these different things. Influencer. Yes. I have a question also that I've written down about that. Oh, actually, I need to touch base on another thing first. So, the business people who are using all these platforms, they also have to attune not only for the content they're producing and the sizing, they also have to learn about the algorithm and to see if, like, I know recently, not too recently, but Instagram did change their chronological order on their postings, and this affected businesses. And so I had the question of, what is your least favorite algorithm change that has been made on social media recently? And these affect businesses majorly because they finally get a system down and then boom, it changes. And it's on every single platform. It just adds onto their workload.
I would say, dang, yeah, that time thing does suck. Like posting reels and stuff, after it's posted for that day and you get a certain amount of likes, it'll kind of get lost in a bunch of reels after like 24 hours or 48 hours, and say that's like an ad or something. Like, I know a reel that I just did with my job, it's like, it's still getting like likes, like one like a day now after the initial post date. It was getting like a bunch of views and a bunch of likes, but it doesn't it doesn't like replay. Because I know that used to be like a thing. I think it was TikTok or Instagram, but you'll be scrolling through your reels or TikToks and you'll be like, I just saw this. But now you don't really get that much anymore. You kind of get lost.
I realized I accidentally put the Canadian spelling for favorite. So just imagine there's no U. Sorry. But we have some great answers coming in here. We have Jackson, YouTube changing their algorithm and UI all the time. I feel like this happens a lot on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. It like becomes so difficult to keep up with what is happening. And I constantly find myself just playing around trying to figure out what is going on in any given moment. Owen says Instagram, I never see my friends post. This has become a huge problem for me, and it's really irritating me. I have to scroll 20, 30 posts in order to see anything from someone I know. And believe it or not, Meta, the only reason I'm on Instagram is to see content from people I know. So just in case they're listening somewhere in the ether, I don't care that much about the brands. I'm not there for it. I usually only see influencers or ads, and my like counts have gone down. Yeah, interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. Candace says the Meta AI search bar, your least favorite. Yeah, I don't like that either. Good one. Daniel says TikTok made it where you can't go viral on your first post. I think that's always been a thing, that it's difficult to go viral on the first post. Yeah, I don't know that that's a new one. This isn't recent, but I miss being able to see what people liked on Instagram. Yes, they took it away. That was a great feature, but also like a slightly concerning feature. It's like, I loved it because I want to know, but maybe I shouldn't want to know, right? I don't know if other people have that,
No, I just had this discussion with a few of my friends literally about that exact same feature, because we're like, oh, you're liking this, or you find out recent news through other people, but now that connection's been lost because it's been taken away.
This actually really bothered me when they took away my ability to see likes on X, because I used to use that like function to find people who I wanted to follow based on them liking similar content to me. And when they got rid of that, I was like, well, now it's really hard for me to search for other people that I actually want to listen to. And so, but I understand the pros and cons, and I think it's always going to be there, and we're always going to be frustrated by these changes. And I think that sort of it's, I like the expression, like, platform changes is a feature, not a bug. Like, it's always going to happen, and it's always going to create kind of like new dynamics that we have to work within.
Yeah, all these that have been listed are just, things that everyone who's trying to become an influencer or trying to use social media has to deal with daily, all these changes on every single platform. And if you just use one or two platforms, that's fine. But at the end of the day, they're having to put, an egg in every single basket on every single one. It's a lot of work. Oh, Cassie, you want to jump into some news?
News-wise, I did pull up the article with the family ethics, but I think the one that, while it was published back in March, I think it kind of talks about a lot of things that we've gone over, which one is about an ex-Vine influencer who talks about that he was making all this money that ended up leading him to dropping out of school, not going to college, and he was like, I once spent his days partying in Los Angeles with celebrities and touring around with other members of his group who made up his social media preference. And then by 28 years old, he has lost all this stardom. In his own words, is completely irrelevant. When social media app Vine disappeared, a new wave of influencers took over, and he was never able to get back to that status. And I don't know, his name's like Taylor Caniff, if anyone was on Vine and recognizes that name, going over the irrelevancy of who he is. And basically, it's an article that he says he lost it all, moved back in with his parents, quit high school for his viral career, and regrets the decision. So I know that even within TikTokers in 2020, there was this wave of TikTokers that were similar to my age, if not younger, who did the same thing, where during COVID, when we were all inside, had nothing to do, ended up dropping out of school, and now their social media platforms aren't taking off near as what they used to. So my question would be for this how would you feel going into Like if say you were in this same status and you were stuck in this area where you quit high school and you were now irrelevant, what would your next moves be through your rest of your adulthood? Would you continue to fight for relevancy, or would you move on kind of learning your lesson from social media? So to shorten that, if you found yourself in one of these relevant positions within social media, lost everything, would you go back, or would you find another way into adulthood?
I personally think this is a good question, but also a hard one because it really depends specifically on the person. Like, let's say you did drop out and you have lost your relevancy, as you mentioned. Do you still have a family who will let you stay at their house? Do you have a way to get a job? Like, not like just like a typical McDonald's job, but like, do you happen to know someone who can get you into a decent job? As it pertains to trying to build yourself back up on social media, that's a really hard thing to do. Once people have left you, they don't want you anymore because either your content is old and nobody wants to see it or view it anymore. But if you want to build yourself up, you got to do something more extreme. You got to go up that staircase higher and higher. So that's why I think you see some of these new Twitch streamers like I don't know his name, but I remember there was this guy going around Japan just harassing people around, like making he kept saying Nagasaki and Hiroshima around them. He would make a bunch of disruptions on the train, and he would just be an overall nuisance. But he would gain a bunch of views. People kept talking about him, and when people keep talking about you, that brings views, that brings money, and then your popularity gets higher and higher. So, as it pertains to just being at the very bottom, I mean, if you want to build yourself up, that is possible. I mean, the only way you only go up once you're at the bottom. But if you want to just make the right decision to be smart about it, you got to see what your options are, what contacts you have, what you can do, and just go slowly from there. Like probably go back into high school, get your degree there, maybe just work part-time and slowly but surely just find something.
I think Damien said it very well. I also had another question to add on to that. So with what you know now about nested precarities, would you go into this industry? Like, would you try and make something of yourself on social media? And what would like make you stay in this industry? What would be a reason you feel like you would have to try and give it another go around?
This is a cutthroat industry. Whew.
If
I did it,
we know.
If I did it, I would do it for fun. Like me and my friends, we did like a little bit of YouTube stuff, and I did TikTok stuff because it was fun to me. It was us being funny and goofy. But after like doing it a little bit and seeing how much consistency you have to like put into it, it's like, man, this is really hard. You really have to, if you want to be an influencer, you really have to just focus most of it to being an influencer or have a team, which you would have to have money for, to have a team to help you run that. So I don't think I'll do it.
This is not a job for me. I think it's one of those you would have to really love it to do it. And you hear a lot of these, the ones who have made it talk about how, you know, while they were going to school or while they had a job, all their spare time went to this. And that just wouldn't be my life. For me, it's a no. But I do find it very interesting. And I think they are exceptional entrepreneurs of our time, is what I will say about that. And I just want to highlight that your team has 1 minute left. So wherever you need to be, start moving it in that direction.
Lily, you're muted.
Okay, I was just saying that was my closing question. With all you know about nested precarities, would you go into this industry knowing that, you know, they don't have the best benefits? You know, the competition is huge. People are always looking for the next big thing. And if you're no longer relevant, you're no longer relevant. The algorithm is biased and you get booted. It's hard to come back. Inconsistent income, you're not always going to be making the same amount every single time you post something, especially when fees and things like that change. And cancel culture and the harassment that comes with it. This is like Tony said, cutthroat industry. And with that knowledge, would you want to come into this industry?
Oh, sorry, I see everyone's comments. Yeah, we kind of already touched base on that with the last question, but yeah, it's a rough industry to get into, but I think we're over time though, so I think we do need to close it.
Well, thank y'all so much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What did we say? Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
If you enjoyed it, they'll be back again next week. No, just joking, they won't. I just want to say, wonderful job, team. Really great. Enjoyed the conversation immensely. For those of you who are in our class, we will be on Zoom on Wednesday. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Katie, any last words before we depart?
No, good job, Group 7. It was a really interesting conversation, and I'm sad that this is the last show of the year. It went by so fast, but great way to wrap it up. And thank you guys in the comments for engaging. And yeah, I had a really wonderful time.
And on that note, I just want to thank the whole class, because I know that I throw you into these like super uncomfortable position of having to do a social media show. And I know at the beginning of the semester, no one wants to do it, but they're literally the most fun part of the class. And I hope you're seeing that as we go through that. It is actually a really fun thing to do. And it's been such a pleasure to watch them week after week. And I've learned so much from all of you. So thank you for that. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye, everyone. Everyone's saying great job to you in the chat, just in case you missed it. Okay, bye, everyone.